And I think with that, and this is sort of why I like startups so much, is that you really have to understand your product really well. You really have to understand the audience really well. And you really have to work closely, I think, with all of the other departments to give the customer the best possible experience and make them, as happy as possible with the software that they're using.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
All right, welcome in. I'm Vince Quinn, and today we're talking about improving the customer lifecycle. And joining us for this conversation is Katie Morrow. She's the head of marketing at Tire Tutor. Katie, welcome to Future Fuzz.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. So let's get the wheels rolling, shall we? It was painful as I said it. I apologize. But let's get this going. So first off, just give people a little bit of background of what Tire Tutor is, what kind of work you do.
Yeah, sure. So Tire Tutor is a shop management system for tire dealers. And it's really the first of its kind in terms of being AI powered, all in one. And we really power everything soup to nuts from e-commerce to supply chain to point of sale. So it really allows independent dealers, and these are, dealers who own their own business, essentially. It allows them to operate off of a single platform, kind of like a single tab on their web browser all day long. So it really kind of makes things simple for them.
Yeah, so all in one place. And so with that then, like you said, it's a lot of independent places, smaller businesses, like those are the kinds of people that you tend to work with the most?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of times when we hear that term B2B marketing, right, we think about sort of like a typical corporate audience. And in this case, it's a little bit different, right? It's folks who are managing a business, and it's a service business. They're changing tires all day. They're doing car repairs, that kind of thing. So they're really busy all day, and they're not online the way you think about sort of like a B2B audience typically is. They're not online all day, working at their computer necessarily.
Yeah, so a little bit of a different approach then, right? When you're thinking about these people, like as head of marketing, you're thinking about how do I get in touch with these people? It's not just like, all right, we're going to spam LinkedIn because like
right.
that's...
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. Very different channels to think about. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about that then, right? Let's get a little bit into this life cycle. I mean, first off, just like, how are you, when you're thinking about customer life cycle, just in your own words, what does that mean to you? Like, how do you look at it? How do you approach it?
Yeah, so I really think about it as the customer journey, right? In terms of when they come through and it starts with that awareness of your company and probably like a pain point that your software is going to solve for them. And you're thinking about their journey from that to becoming a customer and then all the way through to hopefully, upgrading and becoming an advocate. And I think with that, and this is sort of why I like startups so much, is that you really have to understand your product really well. You really have to understand the audience really well. And you really have to work closely, I think, with all of the other departments to give the customer the best possible experience and make them, as happy as possible with the software that they're using.
Yeah. Okay. You said so many good things there that I want to dig into all of this. I mean, first off, just from the idea of when you're talking about customer lifecycle, I love that you open this up from the idea of, obviously awareness, right? They need to be aware and they have a problem. I think that's how everybody would look at it. But then when it gets to the point where for you, the end goal is really advocacy, and these people are like super fans of the product. I love that that's the mindset. So I love, and you see that as just part of the life cycle, right? You're trying to grow every single person there.
Yeah, that's right. And again, it comes from being really closely aligned with all of your partners within the organization. So one of the things that you see as an organization gets bigger, I think, is, folks get a little bit more siloed. So if they are just managing demand gen, they're thinking of these folks as just leads. And then that sort of ends, right, with conversion in terms of sales. And so they're not really thinking about all the way through like the consistency of the messaging and the education and all the things that are going to help, make that experience successful for the customer. So I look at it also from that perspective of like the consistency. And then once they onboard with us, what are the things that we need to do on the marketing side that align, closely with products goals and customer successes goals to make sure that customer continues to understand the value of the platform and continues to learn about new features that are going to benefit them.
Yeah, so I love all of that. I mean, how do you do that, right? On the simple side, like, because it sounds amazing, right? And it's like, okay, well, I would love to do that. Like, how do you even begin that process? What are the kinds of things that you care about as you're trying to maintain that experience for people?
Yeah, so a lot of it is, one of the things that I think about a lot is content as well. So sometimes we think about content more as kind of like a lead magnet, right? But content actually plays a role throughout the life cycle of the customer, because some of the, one of the things that I've done is create a study here that looks at some of the transactional data that we capture, when tires are purchased on a website that we manage, for instance. And that's the kind of thing that, yes, is valuable to the lead or people researching and trying to understand like who's a player in the industry, but is actually just valuable data for our existing customers to understand. Like, what are the most popular times that people purchase online? What are the most popular tire brands? So providing content ongoing is really important, I think, not just for positioning yourself as a thought leader, but actually for providing them with useful information that can help them in their day-to-day business.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally get that because that's where I live in a lot of different ways. I mean, I've pretty much built my whole career in podcasting. That's what it's been all about. And the idea is like, there's so much good information that you can get out. Like, if I were to boil down, I think the central thesis of my professional life, it's the idea of like, you have a good idea, you have good information, and all you need to do is put it on different platforms as easily as possible, right? Like, if this information is good, it can work as a blog, it can work as a video, it can work as a piece of audio, it could be a LinkedIn post, it can be a TikTok. Like, you're redesigning it, you're repackaging it for what that platform is, but it's valuable information everywhere and it's ongoing value. So I think that's like such an important thing because it is the frontline awareness, but then as they're going through the funnel to say, hey, well, yes, this information is relevant for you too. Like, I got off the line just yesterday. It's funny timing with this. I finished a call yesterday with a client and he was like, yeah, man, I'm going to, he ended the call with, I'm going to keep listening to the show. So I'll know everything that you're up to and I know what's going on. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'm glad it's doing it for you. And that's really the dream, right? Is when you've got your people, your customers, they are those advocates because they are consuming the stuff and that's why they love you. You keep giving them that value again and again.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, so with that, then, when you're thinking about it like frontline and then like ongoing, what are the kinds of things that you like when it comes to content? What are some of the pieces or where do you spend most of your time most recently for making content?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I've been doing a lot of lately are videos. And they're not all externally visible right now because they are more targeted to existing customers. And so I've been working really closely with product on, what's the best way in terms of go to market to release new features and make sure that the customer understands, how to use it, what the value is, and kind of what is that sort of long-term vision for the product. So I find videos have been sort of like my go-to. And I've actually been incorporating, as I'm sure a lot of marketers are these days, AI into those videos. So, it's got sort of a more polished voiceover that isn't me anymore. So I think AI opens up actually a lot of opportunities to, like you were saying, take a piece of content and, slice and dice it into different formats for different audiences. And it really kind of lets, the single marketer kind of, exponentially expand some of like what can be done. It expands sort of like your resources in a way.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a big thing, right? I think anybody, no matter the size of the company, anybody I talk to, I swear to God, whether it's a single person that runs their own business, or it's a single marketing person in a smaller business, or it's a 5-person team in a bigger company, like everybody is having to do more with less. And as much as you can right? Like everybody you talk, nobody is like, oh my God, we have so many resources. It's a wide open war chest. Like I swear to God, like everybody I talk to. So it's a real struggle in that way. And with that, to be able to simplify everything, it really is the point. Like, what is the easiest way to make this stuff? And for the idea being of like, for me, it's repurposing and it's all about that vision of people learn different ways, right? And so like at the very least with video, they're getting to see something and hear something. So you're approaching them two different ways to get the information across. And if it turns out they put the video on and just listen to it, like, cool, do what you want.
Yeah.
I do that with YouTube. Like I'll put it on in the background, put on a podcast, and I'll cook or whatever's going on. But yeah, like you want to give them that information in a digestible way. So taking that back then a little bit, because you're making these videos, you're rolling out these new features, you're giving it to people that are your dedicated customers and helping educate them on that. And when you're thinking about the life cycle, then, like, what is the sort of analysis, the KPIs, if you will? Katie, we love our KPIs.
KPIs, yeah.
What are KPIs for you in that kind of process?
So I think you're going to look at sort of like traditional email KPIs, for instance, or, when you are posting, we use a particular software that posts announcements within the product itself, and that gives us certain analytics. There's those things, but I think ultimately to the business, it's really retention, right? And its use. So are they logging in and using the product? Are they using the new features that have just rolled out, that have been announced? So I think in that sense, just the same way that marketing now is partnering, with sales on pipeline and not just, MQLs, I think marketing should also be partnered with product in terms of, feature use, and they should be partnered with CS in terms of retention. So those are like key business metrics that are really driving the business forward, and that marketing can really play a key role in. And I think, to me, that's one of the exciting things about being in marketing, is that you do get to interface with all these different departments and play a critical role in driving the business forward.
Yeah, and so from that idea of collaboration, then, right, to engage with all these different departments and keep it moving, like, is that what's a pace that's been comfortable for you? Is that like a monthly thing? Is it weekly? Is it like, what does that engagement look like to keep that cohesion together?
It's weekly or more.
Yeah.
So, and particularly like I work from home. And so I think sometimes, there are standard meetings that I might have with product and with CS and with sales. And then there's some of those, one-off communications, whether it's Slack or whether it's an impromptu call. And some of the other things that I like doing are working on a document together or working on something like a Figma board. So when you think about like customer life cycle marketing, and you're working out like the touch points, you can't be disconnected, say, from what CS is doing. So if this is an existing customer, there are marketing communications, but at the same time, you have potentially like a relationship manager who's working with that particular client and who has regular intervals and calls there. And marketing should know what those are, and kind of so that those things can build off of each other. So I really like to partner with folks and kind of like build out the map together and make sure that all those touch points are accounted for.
Yeah, I mean, which makes sense, right? Like you're making people's lives easier, right? It's like it's easier for the customer, whether it's a current customer or somebody that's new and getting acquainted and going through the sales pipeline. For those people who are dealing with retention, then you're making it like that's all it's supposed to be, right?
Yes.
Like I think
exactly.
we get complicated with all these different processes and stuff, but ultimately it's like, hey, we're going to work as a marketing team to make this stuff for the idea that it's going to accomplish specific goals to make the business better. And that's why, like, I love your approach to this as you go to all, because it's so important to connect with all these different departments, keep track of things, iterating on stuff and improving it. So obviously you've got like a real passion and focus on that kind of thing. I guess, like, generally speaking, right? If people are listening to this, they're going, hey, I would love to get better myself with my business, like my role as a marketer or CEO, and have a better customer life cycle. What are some of the things that you think people tend to miss, or what could get overlooked when you're trying to get this right?
What a great question. I think when you first start at a company, and this is one of the things that I did was, and other folks may have already sort of started this or worked on it before you get there, but persona development is one of them. And I think that's super important because when you start the role, you really need to understand who your audience is and the kind of messages that will resonate with them. So I think that can get overlooked if you join a company and say you don't necessarily like dig into that yourself and like really, really probe and ask the questions and like potentially not necessarily rebuild it, but really understand it. and get more depth to it, because I think that really is the starting point to understanding the entire life cycle, because that really uncovers the pain points, the type, it's everything from like the psychographic to the, demographic. And so I think that's really key to building out like a really robust life cycle marketing.
Yeah, really huge. Let me give you an example that comes to mind for me, and I'd love your take on this. But I was working with somebody who they were a consultant and they were a leadership coach. So the whole idea was they were helping these larger businesses, more like enterprise level companies, have more effective C-suites and better communication across the board. And when they were initially doing some of the messaging, they would switch, where sometimes they were talking to the executive, but other times they were talking to the employee. And the complication of that was it is a very different message to talk about workplace culture from an employee standpoint versus an executive standpoint. The authority in the situation, the way that you're delivering information, the kind of control you have over it, the impact of it, like it just was so varied. And it was like, look, if you're going to do these, in that case, they had almost two personas and one was the wrong one. They weren't the employee. Because can you imagine an employee going up to an executive and going, listen, I know somebody who's a leadership coach. I think you need that. Right? Like, So when you're spending time then making this kind of content that's for the employee to appreciate the situation, like, yeah, you want to talk about employees, but it's more from that leadership perspective, and like defining that persona is something that unlocked simplicity, and it's just more consistency in the message.
Agreed. And companies may have multiple personas. So like if you have different, for instance, pricing and packaging, and like each one of those targets a different type of buyer, it's really important to understand that and to market around that.
Yeah. And then for you in this situation too, because we're talking so much about like having these personas and understanding that buyer very specifically. I know we mentioned a little bit earlier just how the kinds of people that are typically your customer aren't online so much. So like, what is that challenge like when they're not as active digitally, but you are making this content, the investments in it? Like what is that like experientially, and how does that factor into your calculus, if you will?
Yeah. So one of the things about this audience, right, is that it's not necessarily that they're not online. It's that they're not online 9 to 5 necessarily.
Okay.
So a lot of what we find, for instance, if we are running paid media campaigns, is that these folks will respond and fill out, lead forms at midnight, right? Or at varying hours that are just outside of your typical business hours. And a lot of that is, they're still thinking about their business, but this is like finally their time to like say, sit on the sofa and scroll through Facebook. So it's about timing. And I would say the same for email. And this is what sort of really surprised me. My last job was also kind of in this automotive type of space. And we would look at the email metrics and we'd be like, why is Friday and Saturday, like, why do they have the best open rates, right? It's just the complete opposite of what you would think in a typical sort of like, corporate B2B audience. But again, it's like in that situation, it's because they actually were like at work. This was a different job, but that was when they actually were online. So it was just kind of interesting. You do have to look at those analytics and really understand like when to send things, when to post things, like what, it's about timing as well as like the content and the channel.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it's one of those things that like certain companies that I've spoken to on the show recently, they've talked about how they started to incorporate like people from other people that deal with trades, for example, right? They'll be like, well, we've tried to hire some people who have been in those trades, like to understand that kind of information, because, hey, if they've worked in, I don't know, just like carpentry, for example, for whatever reason, and it's like, okay, well, they've done that experience. They know what that life is. They do know the day-to-day cycles, the kinds of terminology they use, what they truly value. And like, yeah, that time is going to be radically different. You're going in, it's really active work. When you think about tires, right? Like that's active work. That's hard work. Sure. Like that's a busy place. And people got grease on their hands and stuff. Like it's not the easiest thing to be like scrolling on your phone all the time.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So like it's a different experience. It's a different thing to understand. So I love that you've been able to put all of this together. And I really appreciate you sharing this all with us. Like great perspective, really fun conversation. So Katie, for everybody who wants to connect with you, what's the best way to connect?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn.
There you go. All right. Well, look Katie up on LinkedIn and find me on LinkedIn too. Say hi. I'm Vince Quinn. That's Katie Morrow. Thank you for listening to Future Fuzz, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Vince.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.